the Pentagon. April 23, 2019. The United States Navy announces that it is creating new formal guidelines to encourage pilots and other servicemen to report UFO sightings. Officials promise that all such accounts will be taken seriously and fully investigated. The move marks a significant change in protocol by the U.S. military, which previously has tried to deny or cover up these sightings.
The Navy is saying, we're willing to listen, we're going to collect this data. We've seen too many examples of unidentified aerial phenomena around strike groups and other very important installations. It's time that we start getting some more eyes on this.
Officials are quick to dismiss the suggestion that these craft have any connection to extraterrestrials. But there is a long history of military personnel reporting encounters with craft that defy explanation, both around military bases and particularly nuclear weapons.
Something about these nuclear facilities seems to be attracting these UFOs. Something that we are doing there is of interest, and of course the logical deduction is that it's the presence of the nuclear weapons themselves.
Alamogordo, New Mexico, July 16, 1945. At a remote site in the Jornada del Muerto desert of New Mexico, the Army successfully detonates the world's first atomic bomb. The top-secret test is given the codename Trinity. It is an ominous preview of the destructive potential of nuclear weapons.
The Trinity test was a turning point in history. It rates up there along with harnessing fire. It's truly, and in every sense, a milestone in human history.
Just a few weeks after the test, the United States dropped atomic bombs on the Japanese cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. In a world war that had claimed an estimated 85 million lives and threatened to claim millions more, the bomb succeeded in shocking Japan into surrender. But back in New Mexico, the Trinity blast also unleashed something unexpected. A series of bizarre UFO sightings described by witnesses as green fireballs.
So right after the Trinity test site, we have various reports of these green fireballs being seen nightly, flying around at incredible speeds, and no one could identify what these objects were.
The best explanation is that they are, in fact, drone reconnaissance vehicles from a scout ship. They send out these drones and collect the information.
Despite being investigated by Air Force officers and world-renowned physicists, no scientific explanation for the fireballs was ever found. But this was by no means the beginning of the UFO phenomenon. According to ancient astronaut theorists, evidence that people have been witnessing alien craft in the sky had been documented for centuries. And in the weeks and years that followed the detonation of the atomic bomb, the number of UFO sightings began to escalate dramatically.
After Hiroshima, there was a quantum leap change in all of this and a sudden rapid acceleration of the pace of events. The modern UFO phenomenon really took hold in a very short order, and the pace of all this just increased exponentially.
Washington, D.C., June 25th, 2021. The Pentagon's UAP Task Force, along with the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, submits to Congress its long-awaited report entitled Preliminary Assessment: Unidentified Aerial Phenomena. The simple 9-page report represents the most direct and substantive U.S. government account of UAPs ever made public. The headline is that out of 144 reported encounters, only one UAP was identified as a large deflating balloon. The other reported UAPs remain unexplained.
I thought that report was tremendous, a tremendously important step forward. To me, it says two things. UFOs are real, and two, they're not ours. I thought it was an astonishing report, and it spoke volumes. We got 144 cases. We can't figure out 143 of them.
It's monumental. I mean, it is a watershed moment. We're giving cover and relief for folks who are in the intelligence community now and work for our government, and folks who have served, and pilots who can now talk about this thing.
It's only a preliminary assessment. Some people in the UFO community were a bit disappointed because it wasn't disclosure. But what it did say was, I think, very encouraging, important. It essentially said that whatever UFOs are, some of these sightings demonstrate advanced technology, and this, in one sense, is a form of disclosure. It's certainly taking this further than it's ever been taken before within government. It's quite an admission.
Of the 144 reports that the UAP Task Force reviewed, the bulk of the sightings had occurred between 2019 and 2021, after the Navy reporting protocol was put into effect. But perhaps what is most compelling is the revelation that out of the 144 reported UAP sightings, only one sighting has been explained.
Only one out of them has been shown to be spurious. That indicates to me that we're sitting on a gold mine of incidences that cannot be explained using the normal metrics. We're talking about incidences that are beyond the stretch of our imagination, that indicate new laws of physics opening up, and we physicists are just dying to get access to it.
The report established 5 potential explanatory categories: airborne clutter, natural atmospheric phenomena, U.S. government or American industry developmental programs, foreign adversary systems, and a category for UAP reports that require additional analysis, simply called Other.
Other simply means beyond the known technologies of today, which could be extraterrestrial or who knows. But I think the military is now admitting other could mean extraterrestrial.
Although the word extraterrestrial never appears in the report, many observers believe it contains one very profound statement.
There's a bombshell quote in the report that a lot of people have missed, and it says essentially that we may have to fundamentally change our understanding of the laws of physics to figure out what's going on here.
We may require additional scientific knowledge to successfully collect on, analyze, and characterize some of them, pending scientific advances that allowed us to better understand them. This is not a sci-fi novel, this is a government report. That was the thing that most stuck out to me as jaw-dropping. Our current science, our current tech can't understand some of these. The government said that. Wow.
Additional scientific knowledge could mean knowledge beyond the known laws of physics. In other words, the technology thousands of years more advanced than ours.
Washington, D.C., July 19th, 1952. In the skies over the heart of the United States government, multiple unidentified flying objects are picked up on radar by air traffic controllers at Washington National Airport and Andrews Air Force Base.
There were jets scrambled to intercept them. When the jets would get there, they would disappear. When the jets would land, they would reappear again. Basically, it was all over the news, all over the entire world.
So it happened twice on 2 consecutive weekends, meaning that more and more people saw the same thing. They were flying over the heart of Washington, so that is essentially the equivalent of landing on the White House lawn.
According to ancient astronaut theorists, there was a reason that alien beings chose the nation's capital to make contact.
We had a series of UFO sightings that were buzzing the White House, the US Capitol, I think in an attempt to make a very symbolic direct contact saying, hey, we'd like to talk to you guys. But it just seems to me like somehow we didn't get the message.
In the days following the mysterious sightings over the nation's capital, the U.S. government refused to acknowledge any extraterrestrial connection.
We have, as of date, come to only one firm conclusion, and that is that it does not contain any pattern of purpose or of consistency that we can relate to any conceivable threat to the United States.
In 1952, the Air Force created Project Blue Book to investigate the growing number of sightings and contact events. But was this simply an attempt on the part of the U.S. government to suppress the truth?
You've got too many tangible, objective sightings. And of objects, by the way, that were doing things that were just incredibly extraordinary. We've got a physical phenomenon. It's real. The question is why, and that's something we don't have the answer to.
If the United States government and others around the world knew that extraterrestrials were real, why was this information being covered up? Could it be that authorities feared the threat that these unconventional spacecraft represented to national security?
There's a long litany of reports that the U.S. government has authored on UFOs, and many of them show dramatic UFO evidence for real. And yet, their conclusion was it's either hoaxes or mistaken sightings of natural phenomena and so forth. That's the history of U.S. government studies on UFOs.
In modern times, there's the idea that there's a secret and small elite body of people who are covering up the truth from the rest of society. That aliens from space have visited planet Earth, but nobody else is allowed to know about it.
In 1969, the Air Force abruptly terminated Project Blue Book. Could it be that the government denials regarding extraterrestrial contact were failing to convince the public? Or is it possible that officials knew far more than they admitted about these events that were being reported again and again?
Nick, can you tell us about your work at the British Ministry of Defense?
Sure, I worked there for 21 years. And from 1991 through to 1994, I ran their small UFO program. My job was to research and investigate the phenomenon, to determine whether there was anything of any defense significance, any threat, anything of more general scientific interest.
Were you the first person to have that position, or was there somebody before you?
Oh, many, many people before me. We had been looking at this on an ad hoc basis since the Second World War.
And what were some of the challenges that you were faced with in order to determine what was a valid sighting? I mean, was there a certain protocol to the work you did?
Well, there were many challenges, but the protocols were actually quite set. We had a standard methodology very closely modeled on the United States methodologies developed in part by Dr. J. Allen Hynek.
In 1948, Dr. J. Allen Hynek was working as the professor of physics and astronomy at Ohio State University when he received an unusual job offer. The U.S. Air Force approached him to investigate UFO sightings. Reluctantly, he joined the special operation, which would become known as Project Blue Book.
At the beginning, I think my father thought this would be a few weekends worth of work just to poo-poo some flying saucer reports from, Mrs. Jones out in Poughkeepsie.
Despite his skepticism, Dr. Hynek approached the assignment with an open mind. As part of his investigations, he pioneered new ways of studying aerial phenomena. Rather than combing through reports, Dr. Hynek personally investigated sightings and interviewed eyewitnesses across the country. Based on his research, he developed a new system to categorize UFO sightings.
We came up with a classification system of close encounters of the first, second, and third kind.
A close encounter of the first kind is when you see an object within, say, 500 feet. A close encounter of the second kind is when there's some kind of physical trace, maybe some irradiated dirt. A close encounter of the third kind is where you actually have contact with some type of entity.
Dr. Hynek's meticulous application of the scientific method in his investigations enabled him to dismiss many alleged sightings as aircraft, meteors, or even stars. But curiously, of the more than 12,000 UFO sightings Dr. Hynek's office investigated, 701 remain categorized as unidentified.
What my father was fascinated by were this irreducible core of 5% of cases that could not be explained. There was just something that was too legitimate to ignore.
For many, many years, Hynek really just played the Air Force's party line on UFOs. But finally, as you're really getting into the 1960s, 1966 and 67, Hynek makes his public position clear that this is a serious phenomenon.
That set up a really difficult tension because the Air Force was getting more sort of stonewalling in their attitude, and my father really was convinced that there was a phenomena, but really wanted the word to get out.
But rather than expand the investigation, in 1969, the Air Force abruptly shut down Project Blue Book. Washington, D.C., April 2011. The FBI releases thousands of files as part of its online FBI vault. One particular file draws the attention of the media and independent researchers. The memo, dated March 22, 1950, is a briefing to FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover regarding informant information about 3 flying saucers that were recovered in New Mexico. Investigators immediately connect the memo to the infamous Roswell incident, a purported UFO crash that many people believe was covered up by the military in 1947. But this document is just the latest in a series of government files that have been released in recent years, suggesting there may be more to the Roswell crash than the public was told.
As an investigative reporter, I think what I am amazed by is how many leaked documents from the 1940s have actually come out into the world and lay out details about what really happened at Roswell. On July 4th, a rancher named Mac Brazel finds all kinds of strange silver debris. He knows he doesn't understand what he's walking through. He decides to go into Roswell and tell the sheriff, something has crashed on my ranch. Intel coming out of Roswell Army Airfield get assigned to go to the debris field. And these men are told that they are to pick up every single thing that is in the debris field on the Mac Brazel Ranch. Everything is to be picked up.
On July 8, 1947, the headline on the front page of the Roswell Daily Record reports that the military had retrieved a flying saucer. But the following day, the official story is suddenly changed to suggest it was nothing more than a failed weather balloon.
Roswell was the home of the 509th Bomb Group. This was the only atomic bomb-capable squadron anywhere in the world. These people were the best of the best. The idea that intelligence personnel at this base would mistake a weather balloon for something exotic is preposterous. So that, arguably, is the start of the UFO cover-up.
Weather balloon, swamp gas, meteorite, it doesn't matter. It's always something else but a UFO. The Roswell crash was covered up. The fact that they retracted the story of having captured a flying saucer, in my opinion, it was quick PR damage control.
World was told, nope, just a weather balloon. And for more than 30 years, that's where it was left, until witnesses started to surface, saying, no, it was actually an extraterrestrial craft. And people saw alien bodies.
Roswell researchers suggest a government-sanctioned bond of secrecy has prevented witnesses of the crash and retrieval from coming forward publicly. But many did choose to come forward later in life, including the first military officer to arrive at the Roswell crash site, Major Jesse Marcel. According to his grandson, Marcel privately shared many details of his experience with the family.
My grandfather, Major Jesse Marcel, he was head of intelligence for the 509th Bombing Group. As a kid, basically around the dinner table, we talked about Roswell. And through conversations, we learned that my grandfather was the lead investigator into what has become known as the Roswell incident. And when he was looking at debris, he couldn't make heads or tails or any sense out of what he was looking at. He'd gathered some of the debris and decided to take it home with him. He kind of came to this idea that he said, you know, whatever this stuff is, it's very significant. It's going to change humanity. And I want my family to be part of it. This is very important.
According to the family's story, Major Marcel came home after his first visit to the site and laid the debris out on the floor of their kitchen. Some of the material was a strange, thin metal, similar to foil, except when crumpled up into a ball, it would bounce back to its flawless state. Marcel also claims the metal was not the same material featured in newspaper photographs being held by his grandfather.
There's a pretty famous picture of him holding a piece of debris, which is just a piece of foil, basically, and it was weather balloon material. He begrudgingly went along with the story, held it. And if you take a look at that, you'll notice that he's not looking at the camera. He's looking up somebody barking him orders. He fell in line begrudgingly and did what he was supposed to do.